Have you ever left a conversation replaying everything you wish you'd said? You had the right words, but something inside you made you feel like you weren't allowed to say them. You articulate well, you're intelligent, but you still find yourself shrinking in moments where you should be speaking up. Why is that? It isn't just about a lack of confidence, it's about emotional planning. And today, we're going to talk about what really keeps you quiet and what it takes to get your voice back. If you're new here, I'm Davina Dandridge, author of Brains Baubles, Do What Works For You, and creator of the Emotional Sophistication Map and the Self-Gut Check Method. This is Brains Baubles Live, where high-functioning women learn how to lead emotionally, think clearly, and stop overgiving in the lives they're no longer excited to live. Now, before we go too far, I'm not a therapist. I'm an emotional strategist, and I've lived through this. I've lived through a silent voice. I've overperformed to be accepted. I've played small in rooms where I should have owned the floor. So if this resonates, it's because I know an emotionally imposed silence firsthand. I remember sitting in a department meeting, and I was a professor. I was qualified. I was published. I was prepared. I had a strategic suggestion that could have shifted the entire conversation, but I didn't speak up. And it wasn't because I didn't know what to say, it was because I knew the room. I knew what it meant to be seen as too direct, too confident, or too much, especially as a woman in a space that only made room for my presence, not for my perspective. So I stayed quiet. That moment taught me that silence isn't always strength, but sometimes it's strategy rooted in self protection. But over time, those small silences add up. They shape your voice before you've even realized you muted it. Emotional sophistication begins asking, why am I holding back? And what is this silence costing me? So let's call it what it is. When you routinely silence yourself, you're not being humble, you're being conditioned. Research and development psychology shows that girls from an early age are rewarded for being agreeable, selfless, and quiet. This conditioning creates a pattern of emotional suppression that follows women into adulthood, and it disguises itself as emotional maturity, but it's not emotional maturity. Is self abandonment dressed up as good behavior. You become fluent in the language of politeness and self sacrifice, but you forget the language of your own needs. You say things like, I'm just tired, or I'm fine, or I don't want to cause trouble. But what you really mean is, I'm overwhelmed and no one seems to notice it. I'm worried I'll lose the relationship if I ask for more attention, or I feel invisible but I don't want to sound ungrateful. You become a master of emotional translation, turning every legitimate need into a watered down version of what somebody else can digest. I worked with a woman once who told me she hadn't had a real conversation with her husband in 6 months. They talked, okay, but not about what mattered in their relationship, not about how she felt like she was invisible in her own life. And when I asked her why she hadn't brought it up to him, she said, I didn't want to start an argument. That illusion of peace keeps things calm on the surface, but inside you're in a storm. And eventually you'll lose your ability to even name what you feel. And that's not peace. That's what I call performance. This is where the BLING method comes in. If you're new, it's a framework I teach that helps women connect with their emotional truth. So let's go through this. Believe. Believe in your right to have needs. Learn. Learn to decode your emotional habits. Investigate. Investigate where your silence started. Negotiate. Negotiate your new emotional standards. And give. Give from overflow and not from survival. If your silence is rooted in emotional overfunctioning, then you're not alone. Most high functioning women aren't loud about their needs. They're quietly disappointed so that no one sees them. That's no way to live. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Life and death are in the power of the tongue." But what happens when your tongue is silent? Silence doesn't hold back the truth, it births resentment, the kind that gets buried under productivity and perfection. You're showing up at work, you're taking care of everyone, you're smiling on that Zoom call, but inside you're tired of pretending that everything is fine. That's why regaining your voice starts with more than just speaking up. It starts with speaking honestly about yourself first. Here's some action steps for this week. Number one, name what you've been silencing. I want you to write it down, then say it out loud, and don't edit it. Number two, track your self talk. Catch yourself when you downplay how you feel. When you say, "I'm tired," you might actually mean, "I'm emotionally drained." And that's fine to express that. Number three, ask this question: when did I learn that my voice was too much? And if you're ready to dig deeper, go to davinadandridge.com and take the emotional sophistication map. It'll show you where you are overfunctioning and how to stop living on emotional autopilot. You can also grab my book, Brains Baubles, Do What Works for You. It's not a motivational pick-me-up. It's a playbook for becoming the woman you've always wanted to be. If this resonated with you, hit like so I know that this message landed. Subscribe if you want more sophisticated strategies for emotional leadership. And in the comments, tell me, what's one moment where you wish you'd spoken up but didn't? Let's talk about it. You haven't lost your voice. You've just stopped trusting it. And now it's time to remember where you learned to be quiet and why you no longer have to be.